This is Optimal Finance Daily, episode 1954. Pay Yourself Last, Why You Don't Need a Budget, Part 2, by Stephen Keyes of tripofalifestyle.com. And I'm your host and personal finance enthusiast, Diana Merriam. Now, today's post is a continuation from yesterday. So if you're new here, I'd recommend listening to yesterday's episode first. But if you're all caught up, let's hear part 2 and continue optimizing your life. Pay Yourself Last, Why You Don't Need a Budget, Part 2, by Stephen Keyes of tripofalifestyle.com. When you splurge on something unimportant and luxurious just because it's in the budget, you're really shortchanging yourself. That money could have been used to buy something more valuable instead, like freedom. Secondly, setting up your budget so that every extra expense needs to be planned for in advance takes a lot of joy and spontaneity out of life. Imagine instead having so much excess cash flow that you could pay for a vacation of any length on a whim because your baseline expenses were so low to begin with. Most of our vacations are planned just days ahead of time, if at all. We're apt to capitalize on great deals or once-in-a-lifetime opportunities immediately as they arise because we aren't beholden to any specific budget. But when we travel, we also find creative ways to do it absolutely as cheaply as possible. Especially during our accumulation years, we realize that every dollar we could avoid spending would be left over to buy us the freedom to take our next trip or make our next investment. Use the sweep away method to keep accounting simple. If you're a type A person, this whole pay yourself last thing might sound like a disorganized nightmare. How do you know when to invest excess money? How much? What's the system? Allow me to alleviate your concerns with a simple accounting strategy that I call the sweep away method. The idea behind paying yourself last is that you're always keeping your spending as low as you can while satisfying your needs. By doing this, you're left with tons of excess money from every paycheck that never gets spent. That money will naturally pile up in your checking account where it won't be earning any meaningful return. To prevent that from happening, you'll want to decide on a target balance for your checking account and sweep away the excess on regular intervals. For example, we have all of our bills set to autopay from our checking account. If we keep a minimum balance of about $5,000 in it at all times, there's no chance of an overdraft. We just don't spend that much in a month. As income pours into our checking account, its balance exceeds that $5,000 threshold. And then, about once a month, we'll sweep all that excess money away to a more productive investment account, leaving the checking account with a clean $5,000 baseline balance again. Your income fills up your checking account until it starts overflowing beyond its target balance. From there, regularly sweep the excess cash away to a high-yield savings account, high-interest debt balances like credit cards, lower interest debt balances like mortgages, and investment accounts in that order. If you want to be aggressive about debt payoff, you can choose low-end balance targets for your checking and savings accounts to get started on your debt faster. The specific place that you sweep your excess money away will depend on where you are in your financial journey. If you haven't accumulated an emergency fund of cash in a high-yield savings account yet, you might want to sweep excess money there first. It's always good to keep some easily accessible cash on hand. Once you have a few months' expenses in a savings account, the rest of your excess cash should be shoveled into high-interest debt like credit cards or student loans, starting with the highest rate until it's all gone. Once you're free of high-interest debt, then you might start sweeping money into lower interest debt, like your mortgage balance or your investment accounts if you prefer. Since we've always been debt-free, including mortgage debt, 100% of our excess cash has always gone directly into investments. By strategically sweeping excess money out of your checking account, you're ensuring that it's always working as hard as possible for you. And if you're the type of person who's tempted by a big checking account balance to spend more, this method will mitigate that temptation. If an unusually large expense pops up, like a hospital visit or a dead HVAC system in your house, you can pay for it out of cash balances in your checking and savings accounts first, and then promptly refill them afterward in the standard order. No sweat. Optimize your spending first. With all that said, I should mention that Pay Yourself Last is an advanced financial strategy. If you're not yet at a point where your expenses are way lower than your income, then you need to work on that first. Drive an older car or ride a bike, get a roommate, cut your insurance and TV bills, eat food from Walmart and Costco, and work some side hustles. Just do whatever you can. Once you achieve a wide gap between what you spend and what you make, consider ditching your budget altogether. It's less stressful, and if you're anything like us, you'll probably end up saving even more as a result. Or if you have a different budgeting method that's already getting you exactly the results you want, feel free to just ignore all of my rambling. You gotta do what works for you. You just listened to part 2 of the post titled Pay Yourself Last, Why You Don't Need a Budget by Stephen Keys of tripofaLifestyle.com. I'm a huge fan of budgeting because for me, it's all about awareness. It's about telling your money where to go versus wondering where it went. It's a tool for paying attention. And there are many different styles of budgeting. You could go for a zero-based budget where you give every dollar a job before it even hits your bank account, and then you check in regularly to make sure it's doing its job. Or you could opt for an anti-budget where you just focus on paying yourself first and not worry about the rest. If the anti-budget appeals to you, check out a speech from the Economy Conference by Paula Pant. It's called How to Never Again Say, I Can't Afford It, and it's available now on the Economy Conference YouTube channel. When it comes to spending less and saving and investing more, there are lots of tactics you can implement. For example, automate saving and investing or using cash envelopes, etc. But I found that I wasn't actually able to change my spending until I changed my underlying desires. We've been conditioned since birth to desire more and be good consumers, so it can be difficult to change this mindset. But if you're able to foster a strong sense of gratitude for what you already have, it can start to curb that desire for more. And that's another episode of Optimal Finance Daily in the books. Thank you for your support and for listening every day. I'll be back in just a second with a bonus episode. So I'll see you there where your optimal life awaits.